and I was just going through it the other day. And in there, not only do I talk about baseball, I'll give you a history of Prohibition and how they played, because the Monarchs are playing teams who were formed after Prohibition by breweries. And so I give you a little history of that. And then they're playing in Birmingham and travel. So and there's lynching going all around them. So I give you a little history on lynching. These are not things you typically read in a baseball book, but baseball doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in a society that has other things going around it. So that's the kind of thing, that's the way I kind of write the history. And for some people, it's a little too much, but, if you want to get a balanced approach, pick up one of my books.
That's awesome. Please give me some more of those stories. Like, when you were going pretty much door to door talking to these men, these great men from our past, what are some of the challenges they face? We definitely know you had racism and classism and full effect. What were some of the other things they were telling you they were facing? What were some of their biggest obstacles?
Well, I can tell you this. Coup Papa Bell, the thing that I remember the Coup Papa Bell telling me. Now, remember, I'm a 20-year-old black guy, and I'm coming in. I want to write. I want to learn. And Coup Papa tells me, he says, the greatest baseball players that ever lived were black. He said, it's up to you to prove it. And, and I was in my 20s, and I never forgot that because that's not anything close to what I ever heard. And so, but he lived it, and he saw it. And so I try to be his eyes for another generation, and that's kind of the spirit I bring to it. But, they talk, well, one of the things they talk about was travel, traveling at that time. And, and now I have a new appreciation for it since I've traveled so much, is that, when they were traveling, it was tougher times than I'm traveling in. But even I have to sometimes be conscious of where I'm going. In these days, just imagine how they had to travel back then. And so they were always conscious of all these places. But whenever they went somewhere, there were always people who wanted them to be there. And so those are the people who came to the games to see them and to see them play. And so in every community, even though there were people who were opposed to you being there and maybe they didn't like, the fact that they had to pay to see you, there was always people who did want to pay to see you. And then the other thing is, I think I realize, even myself, when I go somewhere, some nights it's a full house, and some nights it's not as many people. And I realize a lot of times I'm at the mercy of the person who's promoting the event. And so the Negro League players, as they travel, and all their games weren't played in major cities. They're playing exhibition games all week long in small towns and things like that. They're at the mercy of the promoter. So the promoter does a good job, they make more money. The promoter's just so-so, they don't make as much money. So the promoter and promoters in these various towns were very important. And then also I'll tell you something else. This kind of comes to basketball. I don't know if you knew Abe Saperstein. You probably heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
Harlem Globetrotters owner. Yeah, Abe Saperstein. And also Eddie Gottlieb, who had the original Philadelphia Warriors. They all made their money in Negro League baseball before they ever got to basketball.
Wow.
They were promoted. They were promoted. Yeah, so there is a connection to the basketball. Matter of fact, to this day, Eddie Gottlieb, he booked everything around Philadelphia. So he had the Hilda team, the Philadelphia Stars. He booked the Philadelphia Stars. They couldn't play in Philadelphia without Eddie Gottlieb because he could stop you from coming in or keep you out or book the heck out of you, right? So they had to play ball with Eddie Gottlieb. And so people say, who is Eddie Gottlieb? Well, today the National Basketball Association Rookie League Trophy is named the Eddie Gottlieb Trophy. But there's people don't connect them together because they don't really know the Gottlieb story. So, matter of fact,
that's a very interesting fact.
Yeah, and so there's this history. It's all connected. It's all connected if you know how to follow the threads. And And I have a book that, matter of fact, hopefully, if some people are looking at it now, hopefully it'll be signed. But it's on Dizzy Dean, and in this particular book, I write extensively on Eddie Gottlieb. Probably the best you've ever seen research on Eddie Gottlieb, besides his own book that he wrote. But I tell you about the Eddie Gottlieb as I see Eddie Gottlieb.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, were there any black promoters during this time, or was there any black owners in the Negro League, or was this an exclusively white thing, just played by blacks?
Well, probably I'm going to give you two names from Pittsburgh. One of them is Gus Greenlee. Gus Greenlee, he comes into the game around 1931, right? And he looks at the game and he decides he's going to change this. And so what he did was he felt like black teams ought to be playing in major league stadiums. So he created the East-West game in Chicago. That's Gus Greenlee. He also felt like black people need to own their own parks. So he built his own park in Pittsburgh. So now black teams can play in that park. They don't have to just rent white people's parks. Then also he started the 4-team doubleheaders in Yankee Stadium in Ebbets Field. And so he was a great pioneer, but he was just changing the course. And he was a promoter. And also John Henry Lewis, who was a champion. He was kind of like the light heavyweight champion of the world. Mm-hmm. Gus Greenlee was the one who was promoting him in boxing.
Wow.
So he had his hands in boxing as well as baseball, and he had a little hand in football too. We had black football leagues. I don't know if you knew that either. But all of this is history. But yeah, it's so much to get it all in one. But I'll just say we had black football leagues, and there were some players. Matter of fact, there was a guy who played shortstop for the Kansas City Monarchs, who was also had graduated from. I think he was at Wiley at one time, but his name was Hallie Harden. But he played professional football, and he also played professional baseball. But there was a guy named, I'm going to call his name, I just drew a blank on him, because he played out west. I'll come back to it. But so we had guys who were actually playing professional football in the NFL and playing baseball. And there's one guy, somebody out there knows the name. I'm just drawing a blank on it. And I've written about him before too. So, but about anything you can name, we've done. Matter of fact, I don't know names like Wu Fang Ward. I used to hear the older people talking about him. Wu Fang Ward, he went to Wilberforce, but he played professional basketball, professional baseball, professional football as well. So Wu Fang Ward, and who you can't hardly find 10 paragraphs about him anywhere.
Wow, and I've never even heard the name.
Yeah, Wu Fang Ward. You can look him up. And also the New York Wrens, Fats Jensen and those guys, the George Fell and all of them, they were baseball players as well, playing with the New York Black Yankees, as well as playing professional basketball with the Renaissance, New York Renaissance. And the same thing happened on the Harlem Globetrotters as well with Ted Strong and people like that. So you had a lot of guys who were just tremendous athletes, and unfortunately, not only did they not get the coin that they deserved, but they don't get the recognition to this day. And we could be talking about these people because these are people that young people could look up to and learn something from their story, both the bad from the bad and the good. But you can't learn anything from something you don't know anything about.
Exactly. One of the things before I know you probably pressed the time. One more thing I wanted to ask you was this: what are some of the stories in regards to being in regards to these men and women? These men, you said they weren't getting the coins they deserved. Are there any success stories to whereas these guys took this little bit of money that they were making and they became uber successful, like a LeBron James, like a Michael Jordan, but, definitely not on that scale, but the way Michael Jordan and LeBron James turned their fame around.
Oh yeah, many people. I know if I just use right here in Kansas City, Frank Duncan, who was a catcher for the Monarchs for a long time, he opened up his own bar. So he ran a bar here for a long time. It was his own business. Mm-hmm. Eddie Dwight, who played for the Eddie Dwight, who played for the Kansas City Monarchs there. He became a state grain inspector, and his son Eddie Dwight Jr. became the first black in the NASA space program. Wow. That's just here in Kansas City, but you can give this story all over the country. And one story that I've been talking about quite a bit was a story with Meghan Markle, and I work with a guy from London, and he worked with the Daily Mail, and we broke this story about Meghan Markle's great aunt. She was married to a baseball player who played for the 1931 Homestead Grays, who I happen to think were better than the 27 Yankees, and which is pretty good group. They were an outstanding team. I wrote a whole book about that one too. But Meghan Markle's uncle Evans was on that team, and Bill Evans, he was on that team, and he was married to Meghan Markle's great aunt. And Meghan's great aunt, when she passed, she willed the house to I guess her brother, who was Meghan Markle's great grandfather. Long story short, Meghan Markle's mother lives in that house today.
Now that's awesome.
Same house out in Los Angeles.
That's one of those stories that needs to be an example of our young people of how you need to purchase property. You need to be able to pass that down because it creates a legacy. It creates generational wealth. It puts us in a situation to whereas we set an example for generations to come, not just being renters, being buyers, not just being sitters. This is something that it could be a documented history from that house alone because that's an awesome story. You go from the Homestead Grays to the Palace in England. That's a story that's right out of a comic book. Well, not even a comic book, a fairy tale. And that is an awesome situation. So yeah, that's definitely a story that needs to be told, and we are going to. You know what? I know again, Phil. It has been truly a pleasure. I will definitely be in. What I'm going to do, I'm going to reach out to you after I get off the air tonight, and I want to continue to talk to you about this and set up another interview because there's far too much information to just do this in an hour. So I look forward to talking to you again. And again, I will speak with you again tonight if you don't mind, and then we can set up other times that we could set up so we can continue to talk about this information and continue to share this information with our community and the world because, for one, as you stated, our community needs to delve into the history of not just Negro League baseball, basketball, football, and other athletic endeavors. We need to be interested in the history of our people so we can create that sense of pride that was once there and build it. And so as we continue to meld into the melting pot, we will have a foundation of pride and be able to move forward.
I totally agree. And you're in Chicago?
Yes, sir.
One of the greatest sports cities in America from an African American standpoint.
Before you go, you got to give me a Chicago tidbit so I can show it on my buddy's face and say, I got this directly from Phil Dixon. Talk to me.
Well, I'll tell you what. When I think about Chicago, I think about Andrew Rube Foster. And Andrew Rube Foster, to me, was the greatest pitcher in America at one time. And he operated out of Chicago, and he never gets the press. So when I think about Chicago, it's kind of like if I go to St. Louis, I'm thinking about Coupapa Bell and actually going there. And I didn't actually get a chance to know Rube Foster, but I knew his sister and I knew his daughter-in-law, and they helped me quite a bit. They lived on Michigan Avenue there. And down not too far from where the Chicago Defender was at that time. So But Chicago and its baseball history, there was only two places that all the ball players were trying to get to play baseball,